Hello and welcome to the Hellenic Centre in Paddington Street, where, as you can see, the rehearsal room is set up for a socially distanced session with the Oxford Philharmonic Orchestra. I'm Jessica Duchen, and it's my great pleasure to be here today to interview Marios Papadopoulos, who has been the leading star of and creator of this wonderful orchestra.
Since the end of March, we've been idle as far as being on stage performing. So it's really wonderful to be back and to stand in front of the orchestra to make music, even in this environment of social distancing. And so we rehearsed yesterday and we filmed a couple of pieces. And it was just so refreshing to make music again, you know, with our team.
Yeah. How is the morale of the orchestra at the moment?
I thought it was very positive. Spirits were high. From a practical point of view, we weren't sure whether we would have the intimacy required for performing Mozart with social distancing. But I think it worked. I thought it was remarkable how the ensemble was sort of maintained. And, you know, at the end of the day, with such beautiful music, you know, even if you feel depressed, your spirits are lifted by what you play and what you hear.
Mm. How have you been spending these past months?
Yeah, it hasn't been easy. I mean, I've been in lockdown like so many other people, but for some reason I kept myself busy. So there was quite a bit of editing to do for some recordings I made in the past. I've been also writing a book on my journey to Oxford and my early experiences that shaped me as a musician. And I've been learning a little bit of German, which is something I've wanted to do for a long time. But, you know, I think for a lot of people, this was also a time to maybe reflect. For me, certainly, it was a little bit of a baptism through fire and water. Sort of, you know, you sort of cleanse yourself, and you emerge anew. That's how I feel, anyway. So I'm still not sure whether I've come through yet, but I'm working on it.
I think one thing that struck me very much about the sort of music making that's emerging from lockdown is the value of making the most of the people we have here and the value of local events as well. So suddenly things perhaps becoming more concentrated and an audience of Oxford people coming to a concert in Oxford are perhaps going to be that much more appreciative of their own town orchestra, perhaps.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. I think you're right. We can't wait to go back to the Sheldonian Theatre, our home, and perform again. There are logistical problems. It's the university ceremonial hall, and it will be used more and more now for teaching, so we're not sure when we can return. I think a moving experience for us, and as you said, for anybody that might come along to hear us.
So how, given the setup where everyone is socially distanced and everybody has their own music stand as opposed to having a desk partner who can do the turning, what are the sorts of unexpected challenges that might have been popping up for you with the setup?
Yeah, first of all, we're very lucky, I think, to have a space like this because the acoustics are good and I think people were able to hear each other. The most distanced instruments were the wind. Mm-hmm. I think they were about 11 meters away from me. Horns and oboes and flutes in one of the movements of the flute concerto, Violin Concerto. But as I said, it was remarkable how sort of everybody was able to hear. we should also remember that this orchestra is very used to working without a conductor when I often do a concerto directly from the keyboard. And because of the flexibility of the players, we do a lot of chamber music, a lot of chamber classical repertoire. So they're used to working in an environment where they have to play as chamber music players and listen attentively to each other. So I think that experience helped in what we're trying to do here.
So you have some of the country's top chamber music players actually working with your orchestra.
Indeed, who are enormously experienced, and as I said, we have over the last few years, for instance, been playing chamber music on a regular basis, and that is so important because they come to understand perhaps what my musical thoughts are, and vice versa, and therefore when they go and take their positions in the orchestra, that sense of understanding permeates right through the ranks, and that is very, very important for creating homogeneous sound and a sense of style, which is again harmonious. And so that is very, very important, and it was a very pleasant experience.
Why did you pick Mozart, and why these particular pieces, the Violin Concerto and the Symphony?
Partly for practical reasons. We had to put something together with a small ensemble. We've played a lot of Mozart over the years, a composer very close to my heart, as it is for millions of people. And so, again, with the experience we have gained over the years, we feel that perhaps we might present some of the familiar works in a slightly different light, and try and make a musical statement. So we did the A major Symphony number 29 and the G major Concerto for violin with one of our concert masters.
For me, it's so wonderful to have a chance to hear the Symphony number 29, because it's a great favourite of mine. It doesn't get done very often by large mainstream orchestras. It tends to be that I often feel that Mozart has slightly been kind of conscripted by the specialist bands who say you cannot use vibrato, you have to do it this way. There's still some of that around. And it's rather refreshing to see a group of musicians like the Oxford Philharmonic just having the chance to relish this music, which is so special.
Yeah, absolutely. You use the right word there, Jessica, relish, and that is what it's all about. There are no... What I've learned over the years is there's one rule, and that is that there are no rules in music. There's so many different ways of looking at a piece of music. And it's funny, you said that, some people approach a work like this with hardly no vibrato. And yet in fact, yesterday I was working on the orchestra and suggested that some of the repeated notes that Mozart uses on the long notes, for instance, are nothing else than written out vibrato. And we actually did a little experiment. I said to the orchestra, don't repeat the notes, the same notes. Instead, make, at the same speed of the semiquaver, a vibrato. Hold it long, and instead of going da-da-da-da-da, just do the same speed. And it worked. And all of a sudden, you could see the sound that really should come out of those repeated notes, which are often heard in martellato. So people say, oh, no vibrato. What does that mean? What do you mean by that? When a note needs to be sustained, there's something that needs to pulsate to keep it alive. Yeah. So what is it? Mozart writes it out like that. but he's suggesting perhaps something else. So, you know, there's all these subtleties one has to consider and certainly not be dogmatic with setting down rules. That for me is something which doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I was very interested when I read the treatise on violin playing by Mozart's father Leopold, where firstly he actually provides exercises for practicing what he calls tremolato, which is what we call vibrato, and he gives as the ideal the human voice for the sound of a violin.
Exactly.
Which is that something you would chime with?
Well, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I mean, I think I approach Mozart as many of my colleagues, you know, through the experience we have of knowing and hearing and studying the operas. So that's very, very, very important. And so there's a vocal element throughout Mozart's other oeuvre, orchestral or piano or string quartet or whatever. And for instance, his choice of keys. And A major is a key that, as we know, is one he uses for many of his love duets.
Yeah.
La ci darem la mano from Giovanni, Fra gli amplesi from Così fan tutte. And it has its own color. It has the warmth and tenderness. And also it's a key, as you know, that through which Mozart introduces the clarinets. 482, piano concerto, indeed, the clarinet concerto. So there's a mellowness, isn't there, I think, in A major, and that has to come across. It cannot be played as if you're playing in E flat major, or B flat major, which for me is another autumnal color. So that's very, very important to get that sort of warmth all throughout A major. But also, it's very interesting, you should mention that. I think it's very, very important. The vocal aspect, you know, particularly a slow movement, which is an aria or a duet, but there are times when the heroine sings in a recitativo style. And there are times when she is singing lyrically. And that has to come. And often in an orchestral environment, all you hear is some kind of a lyricism. Where there are moments where you just need to be exclamatory, where the heroine will express tenderness, or you know, warmth and love, and all these different emotions. And so I think one needs to relate this music back to the opera and determine what is a recitative, what is a rhetoric statement, and what is a lyrical statement.
Yeah.
And then it makes sense, because then it's a piece which has drama in the sense that it has, you know, it relates back to, you know, very basic human emotions.
Yeah. I often wonder if there's something operatic about the way he uses the orchestral ensembles and the wind instruments form an ensemble.
Absolutely. I mean, I mentioned Fra gli amplesi. There is an incredible moment when she's hurt and the oboe comes in. What I say always, Jessica, is that the orchestra in a Mozart opera is yet another equal protagonist to all those on stage. And I take issue with many directors or producers that do so much on stage when actually the action is determined by what Mozart already has done. I'm sorry, you're inviting me to talk about my passions.
Yes.
And you know, I'm thinking now about Figaro, Act 1, Finale. That amazing change of scene when, you know, everybody is surprised to see Cherubino. Ta-da-dum, bum, bum. I mean, Mozart has done everything in just those 2 bars. You don't need to do anything else on stage. Just allow the music to speak. No hand gestures, all this, that. That's why in some ways, I favor a concert performance.
Yeah.
You know.
Sometimes less is more.
Less is more. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. I guess this is also particularly relevant for the violin concerto because he very often treats the violin like an operatic soloist.
Absolutely.
And writes the melodic lines seem to
Absolutely.
come from the way he would write for the voice.
Yes, no, absolutely, absolutely. But also when you have a string section, a string section of, I don't know, 8, 10 violins or whatever, and you have a single line, that tends to be a single line. And what I try to do is to make it sound like one voice, in which case it has to have an individual presence. It has to speak like a protagonist. And that's not easy to accomplish because you have so many musicians playing together. But I love individualism. I love a musician to stand out of the chorus, make a statement, and then come back into the chorus. And that is, you know, very, very important. Of course, you know, we live in an environment where, you know, to work on such detail is a luxury.
Absolutely.
But, you know, I must say that here in the Orchestra Philharmonic, we try as best as we can to make musical statements. I will never sit on the fence. You know, routine performance is anathema to me. I will make a statement. Whether you agree with it or you don't agree with it, that's, you know, another matter. But that's just to go into a routine, a performance, or approach a concert as if it were a gig is not for us.
Yeah. Great. Well, I can't wait to hear the results of this.
Thank you,
this
Jessica.
Wonderful
Thank
program.
you. It's
Thank
always
you
such a
for-
pleasure to talk to you.
Likewise. Thank you for making the time to do this. I'm
That's
sure it
all.
will illuminate what we're about to hear.
Thank you. Hope so.
Right.
Thank you.
Marios.
Thank you.